You know, I wanted to talk about a couple more recent games before heading into the new retrospective, but there weren't a lot of games I wanted to cover. Yeah, I had a barrage of games I wanted to talk about, and I put all of them into a poll. However, most of those games didn't click with a lot of people. Only 3 had a lot of votes. Outside of the poll, though, I covered a lot of games that I wanted to cover. I covered A Hat in Time and Bubsy for 2017, and I also talked about Celeste and Bloodstained Curse of the Moon. In terms of the poll, I already did Splatoon 2, and I was going to talk about Spider-Man and had a bit of footage for it, but I got burnt out from it and couldn't get a lot of notes to make a good script out of it, so I had to scrap it. That leaves Cuphead, a game that had a long development time, and it gave Studio MDHR a lot of problems. They got it done though, and it luckily garnered a lot of critical acclaim, and you can see why. You can tell the team put a lot of love, sweat, and tears trying to recreate the old-time cartoons, like it was ripped straight out of the Merry Melodies. I grew up on this style of animation, from the Mickey Mouse shorts to Popeye, and even a few Felix the Cat shorts here and there. So I immediately gravitated towards the art style, and the detail of the white noise on the screen was pretty nice, like it was made from the finest film from the 30s. The game is also filled with that classic jazz and swing that gave it that 40s vibe. And as a person who loves jazz, this soundtrack got me tapping a lot and calmed me down during the crazier fights. That said, there are a lot of crazy fights. Cuphead may be a love letter to the early days of animation. However, it's also a love letter to the early days of arcade games like Contra and Gradius. In fact, if Konami had a hand in the game, it was most likely an inspiration. Oh shoot, I almost forgot the story. Let's sidestep before we continue on that subject. So Cuphead and his pal Mugman head over to the Devil's Casino, and with a winning streak, the Devil makes them a deal. If they win, they get the casino. If they lose, the Devil gets their souls. As luck would have it, however, they lose and beg him to let them go. He agrees, but he tasks them to gather the souls of the people that owe him in return. Without hesitation and a bit of worry in their faces, they agree to take out a collection of colorful and understandably ferocious characters. This is where the gameplay starts to form. Most of the time you'll be fighting a lot of big baddies that can be a task and a half to take down. I definitely had a bit of trouble going through every fight. To give you some perspective, I thought I'd go through the game rather easily. I played plenty of difficult games in my time. Zelda 2, Super Meat Boy, Dark Souls, as well as Celeste early last year. I can take a hard game, I said. I've shown my power, I said. But those games are nothing compared to Cuphead. Well, maybe Dark Souls, but everyone is kind of sick of that comparison, I'm sure. There are 2 difficulties with boss fights, but the regular difficulty is required to beat the game. And really, simple mode is so slow and clunky, I wouldn't recommend going down that road, even if you are having a tough time. Though I guess you can use it if you are stuck and want to see if you can get a new upgrade to help ease the fights. Quick note on the shop though. The shop gives you plenty of upgrades to your basic attacks and buffs that help you in your journey. However, you cannot grab everything since there aren't enough coins in the game to purchase them all. To add on to that note, do not bother getting the health upgrades. I know it's tempting to get something that has the ability to help you last longer, but these upgrades also make you weaker, making the fights last longer, giving you more chances to get hit. So it feels counterintuitive in my opinion. I'd recommend just getting the gun upgrades and other buffs. I personally gravitated towards 2 buffs and 2 gun upgrades in particular. The coffee buff allows your special gauge to automatically fill up, along with what you earn by shooting enemies and parrying anything that glows pink. The smoke bomb is also useful, making you invisible during a dash, which also makes it hard to tell where you're going to land afterwards. In terms of gun upgrades, I tried the spread shot, which would have been good if the individual bullets were a bit more powerful. However, the homing shot, when I got it later in the game, replaced the standard shot for me immediately. It even helped me with the bosses that gave me a lot of trouble previously. Seriously, I'm sure there's a downside to it, maybe the bullets are slower, but I couldn't really notice anything. That's a good way to transition to the types of levels. Let's start with the running guns. These are standard, well, run and gun levels. You run and shoot any obstacle in your way to get to the goal. These are also the least interesting part of the game for me. They just feel slow, and many of them feel like they're overfilled with enemies and traps that make them even more annoying. These are also where you'll find the coins, but if you don't really care for that, these levels are thankfully optional. In fact, there are a couple of levels I just left unfinished, so let that tell you how I feel about them. Thankfully, they only feel about 20% of the game. The rest is all boss fights. You have standard ground combat, which confine you to an arena where you fight one of the devil's targets. As I said before, they can certainly be a challenge to overcome, and many can take a long time to beat, which can make the fights a little tedious, and sometimes the difficulty can be just inconsistent. Take this dragon for instance. I thought the fight was rather easy, as the first 2 phases didn't really give me a lot of trouble. But then the last phase hit, and he was a freaking pain in the ass to deal with, especially when that flamethrower hit. I hope you have a nice hot place in hell, bastard. Same with this queen bitch. This fight took me almost 3 hours to beat. The first phase wasn't bad at all, but the second phase was hell with our bullet bill looking motherfrickers and these triangle void things. I have no idea what these are supposed to be. And the final phase was the worst part of any ground fight. The fists flying around are very unpredictable, and her buzzsaw attack was freaking fast. All with her body being located at the bottom of the screen, making aiming a pain, especially when I accidentally fall through the floors. Thankfully, the homing shot beat her to the ground when I got it later on. There's also the plane levels, and I absolutely love these fights. They aren't as frequent as the standard fights. In fact, I think there are only 5 in the whole game. I grew up on arcade shooters, so these were really up my alley. And this fight in particular actually took me 3 tries before I actually beat it. I was actually shocked to see that fight end quickly. I guess I'm better at these than I thought. Though there is one fight that made me rage hard, Dr. Cal's robot. The first phase is easily the worst part in the entire game. I swear it's worse than the final boss, I'm not kidding. The glaxing looking buggers, the thing that covered your Y-axis if you don't parry it, and this laser that hones in and tries to shoot you down. And they get a hell of a lot worse when you destroy all their components. And then the second phase, while short, was a pain trying to aim at the berserk head, and these homing bombs weren't helping. Thankfully the last phase was the easy part, though these electric rods are a pain to dodge. I seriously only fought this form 2 or 3 times and I beat it no problem. I guess the devs were taking pity on me. The airplane also plays by different rules, since it will always use the standard bullet shot as well as bombs later in the game. There is technically one other type of stage, these mausoleums, where you parry all these ghosts so they stay away from this vase. Complete this easy task, no seriously all of them were piss easy. You can get a new super move. These are moves that you can pull off when you have a full special gauge, and I use this more than the pitiful Hadouken. You have 3 of these special moves in the entire game, and honestly I only used the first one almost exclusively. I used the invincibility a couple of times, but it lasted a good, 5 seconds, so I stopped using it. And I didn't even bother with the last one, the first one was just so practical to me. A horizontal beam attack that does a shit ton of damage? Yeah, I'm definitely going to be using that a lot more. Couple that with a coffee buff and you are set for life, along with a homing shot, cause hot damn this thing is sweet. So all in all, I like Cuphead a lot. I do want to love it more though. The presentation is an easy 10 points for me and the gameplay is super strong, but it's the difficulty that gets me upset the most. I love a little challenge, some of my favorite games of all time are considered difficult, but this one goes a bit far in my opinion. The running guns are a tad slow for my liking, the ground fights are fun aside from a couple I mentioned earlier, and the plane shooters, while a ton of fun, don't appear as often as I'd like them to. If the game didn't have the high production value, I'd be singing a different tune probably. But the fact that they poured a lot of effort into the game to make it look, sound, and play great, I tip my hat to the people at Studio MDHR. I know for a fact I'm going to look out for their next big project. And hopefully it's a great time like this one. Just let up on the bullshit a bit, okay guys? Okay, so this is where I'd go live and talk about what I'm going to do in the near future, but I'm still in the middle of renovating and the room is a mess, so I can't set up the camera and light stand how I want it. So I'll just talk here for now. So the reason why I wanted to do Cuphead in the first place was to give a preview on the next 2 retrospectives. One being a run and gun and the other being an arcade shooter. I won't say specifics yet, but the next one will be a celebration of a certain game that came out not too long ago. I hope you guys enjoyed that, but until then, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll play with you guys next time.